Hello, everyone, and welcome to this live reactive here on F1. As the news has broken this morning, Christian Horner is to leave Red Bull with immediate effect. The news coming in first thing this morning and being reported widely, globally. Alan Permane has been promoted from the Racing Bulls setup to team principal. Laurent Mekies from the same team setup, the sister team, of course, will be promoted to CEO of Red Bull. Alongside me here for this live reactive, bringing you all of our reaction and trying to get to the bottom of just why this has happened and why now, is our lead commentator Alex Jakes and our pundit Greg Stewart. Guys, good.
Oh, I thought we'd lost my stream. We have in fact lost Laura's stream. So extraordinary news breaking this morning. Just to reiterate the news that has broken in the last hour. Christian Horner has left Red Bull with immediate effect after 20 years as team principal. Laurent Mekies has replaced him as CEO of Red Bull, and Alan Permane has being promoted to team principal at Racing Bulls. That is the breaking news that we have. Laura was on the brink of asking us for a reaction when the connection broke.
Yes, my phone decided to connect to the microphone and that removed me from the broadcast. So I apologize for that, but I am back in the room. And yes, Oliver Mintzlaff has made a statement today. Thank you, Christian, for all of his hard work over the 20 years. He was the longest standing team principal in Formula One. Guys, I think the question is why and why now?
I think the answer to that, Laura, is as true as it has been for Formula One history: results. It's as simple as that. Red Bull have gone from one of the most dominant seasons in the history of the championship in 2023, winning all but one race, to suddenly finding themselves adrift and nowhere near the competitive team that Max Verstappen demands out of the team that he's been with for a decade now.
Greg?
Yes, and really the glide path down from the 2003 season has been interesting to watch for the neutral. The team now find themselves fourth in the standings, 288 points off McLaren, who are producing a season for the ages. And allied to that has been the departures of a lot of senior figures within the team, which you take as a vote of confidence in Horner's abilities, because ultimately he is the person, or was the person, running the show.
In Imola, there were rumours, weren't there, that suddenly materialised that he perhaps didn't have the full backing. Those rumours were rubbished. The team themselves said there was absolutely no truth to them. Are they in any way connected, therefore, to, yes, on one hand, this is performance, but are they connected to what we're seeing happening today now?
It's interesting, isn't it, the period of time that has unfolded. There were, as you say, Laura, conversations being had in the paddock that the ownership structure of Red Bull wasn't as confident in Horner as they had been. You've got to remember the context of that second half of the season. Max Verstappen wins only 2 Grand Prix when they'd been used to domination. We then begin the 2025 season. Red Bull have not turned the page on their competitive picture. And so as we made our way to the European part of the season, there was chatter that began in Imola and continued to Monaco. Other teams spotted with CEOs in conversation with Christian Horner. And Laura, I believe you actually put that to him at one point.
I did. I asked him I believe it was Imola. I asked him how, not necessarily whether the rumors were true, because I think that if a team doesn't want any story to continue, they will rubbish it completely. So I asked how destabilizing they were, and Christian Horner replied to that to say that this was made up by a pocket of the internet looking for hits and looking for clicks, and it wasn't to be believed. And he has the full support of Red Bull behind him. So you put it to them, they're obviously going to bat it back to you. And the rumours, as you mentioned, about him meeting other teams, I believe that was around Alpine as well.
Oh, yeah. Multiple people saw him in conversation. It's not unusual, but it is unusual to see. I think the amount of time that he spent with the then CEO, who's now departed Group Renault. So it was clear from this point, and certainly after the Bahrain Grand Prix, obvious to the paddock, discussions took place after that race, because they had gone from contending for wins to fighting with Pierre Gasly on the last lap, just miles off. I think that was the beginning of discussions. And then Horner ultimately losing the confidence of the holding company that released the statement this morning.
Greg, let's talk performance then, because actually if we look at the numbers, and they don't lie, Max Verstappen has scored 165 of their 172 points. They are 288 points behind McLaren in the constructor standings. And Max is now 69 points behind Oscar Piastri. And the big question at this midpoint of the season is Max Verstappen out of this championship fight? Does that mean that it's broken some performance clause within his contract and he's able to leave? And is he joining Mercedes? These aren't particularly good headlines to have around a team, and a team operating pretty much from one car with 12 races done and 12 races to go.
Well, and this is the thing. In 2024, Max was still able to keep himself in contention because the car was there. But, the team, let's not forget, do not have an Adrian Newey to rely upon now to fix any of their problems. You've got Max Verstappen, who is still somehow managing to drag incredible performances out of that car. We only have to think back to last weekend. I still don't know how he managed to put that car on pole position. Obviously, it didn't work out so well in the race. But in a sense, Max Verstappen, by dint of his talent, was able to keep Red Bull in the fight and keep them looking respectable. But with the car's performance tailing off this year, massive struggles in the second seat, which has seen Sergio Perez depart, Liam Lawson be put in for 2 races, only to be replaced by Yuki Tsunoda, who, to use Alex's phrase, can't seem to get a tune out of that car either. It's really heightened all the issues that they're having. And like you say, Laura, the numbers don't lie. Max is saying, I'm out of the championship. I'm not even looking at the championship. Christian at the weekend said, we're not looking at championships. So I think we can assume constructors is definitely done, at least for Red Bull. And I doubt even a man of Max Verstappen's talents could pull himself back into that driver's title fight.
Yeah, Christian said to me, this is a cup final for us now. Each race is a cup final, suggesting we've got no long-term league ambitions and we are just simply playing what we can on each given day. But that's not what Red Bull has been about in its history, and a history in which Christian Horner has been team principal for 20 years. It's never seen another man at the top leading that team. Just sum up, guys, how much they have achieved in that time with Christian Horner, and I guess where they then go from here with this transition year into new regulations in 26 as well.
Horner's legacy is one of the longest serving team leaders in the history of the sport. 8 times they won the Drivers' Championship. 6 times they won the Constructors' Championship. Horner started that job at just 31 years of age. His skill in the early days was to delegate tasks to those who could help him. He gave up an enormous amount of power at the start to make sure that he survived. Great example of this is using David Coulthard to recruit Adrian Newey. Christian Horner alone would not have been able to recruit Adrian Newey. Using DC, who had a relationship with him at Williams and McLaren, allowed them to get the defining character of that team's history, and allowing them to win 4 championships in a row for Sebastian Vettel. And then obviously became a power unit formula when it came back. They were able to fight their way back 4 in a row with Max Verstappen as well. But since Newey has gone, we're looking at 4 wins for Red Bull. And the music has stopped. The ability to delegate earlier on turned into a power struggle, a clear power struggle. And when the founder of the company passed away, that power struggle intensified. And yeah, 20 years is a long time in a very, very powerful job. And that run coming to an end. But as you point out, Laura, 8 times drivers' champions under his watch, 6 times in the Constructors' Championship, and a new man at the helm. Laurent Mekies' extraordinary situation where he goes from being the deputy at Ferrari a couple of years ago, the team principal of Racing Bulls, and now suddenly finds himself in charge of Red Bull, just like that.
How destabilizing, we saw him on the screen there a moment ago, was the departure, do we think, of Adrian Newey around this time last year, just over a year ago, and equally Jonathan Wheatley. And this comes at a quite extraordinary time in the sense that Sauber have scored more points than Red Bull over the last 4 races, with Jonathan Wheatley there now as team principal. They've just secured their first podium since 2012 and Nico Hülkenberg's first ever in the sport in 15 years. These big key figures leaving Red Bull, how destabilizing in the build up to what we're seeing today?
I mean, I think it is totemic in the sense that, you know, Newey was there pretty much from day one. Horner was there from day one. Jonathan Wheatley was there an incredibly long time. These were totemic, dyed-in-the-wool Red Bull figures. And previously, there had never been any question. Yes, there'd been the occasional rumor that had floated through the paddock that, you know, Ferrari were eyeing Newey. But up until certainly we get to the 2020s, nothing had ever come of that. And all of a sudden you had this almost domino effect of these departures. Also Rob Marshall going to McLaren and seemingly doing wonderful things there. And so I think once that started happening, it seemed like the writing was on the wall. So while today's news is shocking, it's not exactly surprising. Like we had all been perhaps anticipating something. But what a time for it to happen. The new regulations upcoming, Red Bull becoming, alongside Ford, their own power unit manufacturer. As it appears, we've just lost Alex briefly. Yeah, it's not an ideal time. And Laura, the thing is now, it throws everything into flux in terms of drivers, in terms of team personnel, in terms of the team standing. So this is a seismic moment in the history of Red Bull.
What about that man there in the picture, Helmut Marko?
Well, that's the other thing. We've heard rumours over the last few weeks that Sebastian Vettel was potentially being eyed as a Helmut Marko replacement, with Helmut Marko's blessing, seemingly. But yeah, for now, to the best of our knowledge, Helmut Marko stays on. He is an Austrian, and obviously we know that the Austrians own 49% of the team, as opposed to the Thais 51%. So that remains to be seen. I think there's going to be other shockwaves coming out of that, but what exactly those are at this point remains to be seen.
And do we know at this stage, and I appreciate the news has broken for barely 2 hours, not even half a morning, but do we know where Christian Horner may well end up, what his plans may be? We talked, Alex, didn't we, about those meetings that the paddock had reportedly seen in Imola of him meeting with Alpine, for example. But do we have any indication of his future and where sort of say his ambitions will lie now?
It'd be very interesting. Obviously, an incredibly painful day for him to leave with the statements reading leaving with immediate effect. There's no ambiguity there. Horner's future is unclear. Red Bull's future is they have to make that an appealing team to work for again. It's as simple as that. You've got Audi eyeing up a UK base. You've got so many different organizations wanting to tap into the skills and expertise that lie in the United Kingdom. I wouldn't be surprised to see Ferrari do a similar thing as well. I think Fred Vasseur was hinting at it a couple of weeks ago. Red Bull are in competition for the brains that power Formula One. We've listed all the people that they've lost, but it's a huge collection of people that put Formula One together. And at any level, if you lose key people in key departments, we've mentioned the names we don't know. There'll be the hundreds of names we don't know that play a massive part. And with Audi sniffing around for that talent, Red Bull need to stop people leaving their organization and rebuild to the front of the field.
We're talking obviously about Christian leaving and what he leaves, the state of the team he leaves it in. What about the incoming guys? What about Laurent Mekies? First of all, you touched on it there, Alex. He's gone from deputy at Ferrari to a team principal, and he's now had this sudden promotion from the sister team who, while doing incredibly well, they have a great car that clearly is much easier to drive than this Red Bull is. Laurent Mekies now has stepped up to CEO of Red Bull Racing. It's a pretty quick path to the top, isn't it?
It's amazing for him. An integral character, used to be part of the FIA setup, and then finds himself and ambitious. He's wanted this role. Make no mistake about it. He was upset when he didn't get this opportunity at Ferrari. It's why he left for the opportunity with Racing Bulls. He's had a great couple of years of learning the ropes of what it's like to have the burden of responsibility, but it's different again with CEO. It's different again. It's even more responsibility for him, but he's a well-liked character in the paddock, and rated for his abilities to run a team.
And
Greg, he's very respected, isn't he? Yeah,
and if they say Fred Vasseur as Ferrari team principal has probably got the hardest job in motorsport, I'd say the job of trying to replace Christian Horner, albeit that he's CEO at present rather than team principal, or rather being confirmed as team principal, with the state Red Bull are in currently, that is a tough ask, and he's going to have to get up to speed with all the powertrain developments for 2026. So he's going to have a lot on his plate to deal with.
And what of Permane as well? He is making that move across as team principal. Alain Permane, once again, very respected man within the paddock. He's a face that's been around for a very, very long time, greatly experienced.
Experience is the word. There's so many years effectively running the show at whatever Renault were known as, or the Team Enstone were known as, for a very long time. Left with one of their annual refreshes of management, has resurfaced at the Faenza-based team, and finds himself now in a position that realistically it won't be that much of a stretch for him to lead a Formula One team. Operationally, he's been doing a very similar role for years, and that experience is key because it's incredibly competitive in the midfield of Formula One.
Greg, for you, Alain Permane?
Yeah,
team principal Red Bull.
We've already seen with Jonathan Wheatley going to kick Sauber, what somebody from that background, sporting director, racing director, whatever they're called within the various teams, like Alex said, it's not that much of a stretch to basically running the show with a title. So from what I hear, people are very happy with Alain Permane within the Racing Bulls setup, and I mean, that's also an interesting job with what they do. What happens with the drivers? Do they keep going with Isaac Hadjar and Liam Lawson? Is there a reshuffle to come? But Alain Permane, obviously previously a dyed-in-the-wool Enstone person, but now seemingly doing very good work at Racing Bulls, enjoying his life in Italy, apparently. So, I think it's a sort of natural progress once Laurent Mekies has been moved into the senior team, if we're to call it that.
Yeah, absolutely. You make a good point there. What of Racing Bulls? What of, I guess, the drivers and how this Red Bull family may be sorted out? There's been much talk about Yuki Tsunoda's performance. Would they be looking to make any sort of change in that regard with the form of Isaac Hadjar at the moment, or are they looking to protect that talent in the sister team, knowing that car is more benign and at the moment it's producing better results?
Yeah, they've got to get a handle on that second Red Bull car, haven't they? It's as simple as that, because even if you've got Max Verstappen, you cannot compete against Mercedes, Ferrari, and McLaren with a one driver team. And Yuki is a better driver than he's able to show at the moment. They will be considering how good an opening campaign Isaac Hadjar has. They will also know the key point that you mentioned there, Laura, that it is a car that is easier to drive. Simple as that. The drivers themselves say that. Liam Lawson has said it. Yuki Tsunoda has said it. They know that is a car with a wider setup window. It's one of the key things for Red Bull to fix. But of course, for all the talk of the second car, this all happens in the wider context of Max Verstappen's future. And I think that is probably the root cause of everything that we've discussed today.
Yeah, how intrinsically linked is Max Verstappen's future and the noise surrounding his contract? Certainly in the recent 2 race weekends, the noise surrounding his future, his reluctance to say explicitly to the media, although apparently he said it in a face-to-face with Christian at Silverstone, but his reluctance to say to the media, I will be at Red Bull until the end of my career. How much is a move like this linked to ensuring they secure Max Verstappen as their number one driver, as they want him to indicate until the end of his career?
It seems odd, the timing, doesn't it? Because I don't think we've ever talked in the last few weeks as much about Max Verstappen potentially leaving the team as we have done recently. And then this domino falls, Christian Horner leaves the team. And as I said, that's throwing everything into doubt. There were rumours of talks with Toto Wolff, perhaps not for 2026, but for 2027, potentially. George Russell making his not displeasure at those talks, but I think there was a certain amount of chagrin that those conversations were happening with the performance that George was offering up, which has been impressive at times. Okay, perhaps not at the super level of Max Verstappen. And I think it's for those reasons that George Russell understood why those conversations were happening. Got to remember as well, going back to 2014, there was a massive race between Red Bull and Mercedes to get Max Verstappen's signature on a contract. The rumor has it that Red Bull were offering Formula One, where Mercedes were offering to support him through the junior categories. It's often forgotten that Max went straight from European Formula 3 straight into Formula One, didn't do the F2 equivalent, GP2 as it was then. So I think for Toto Wolff, there's been this long journey with Max Verstappen. The one that got away, can we get him back? And this announcement, if you are Verstappen's people, you're either going to want to shore up what you have at Red Bull and make that into Max's team, or it then provides the platform to do something else, I would guess.
Was this not always Max's team? Do we not always think that Red Bull has been Max's team as long as he's been at the form he's at now, and that's 4, 5, 6 years? You question whether is this more instability that Max can use as a platform and a reason to say, I need to, as you say, shore up and find a safer solution, or is this the change that perhaps he thinks or he will want to see within Red Bull to ensure that it begins its path back up to the top again? It can go either way, it feels.
You can spin it either way. I would make a contrast to what we saw a couple of years ago when there was so much talk of Red Bull senior management in the news, and we got to Saudi Arabia, and there was talk of Helmut Marko leaving the team. From Helmut Marko, said he felt he was about to be suspended. Max Verstappen very clearly on the record multiple times said that won't be the case. He feels that the story that Greg told us, that he owes his Formula One career to Helmut Marko making one of the boldest calls in Formula One history to put a driver that young in Formula One, to make sure that Mercedes didn't get that signature. That loyalty was always to Helmut Marko. Max Verstappen needs a winning car. That's all he's interested in. He's in a winning car that gives him an opportunity. He's had a winning car occasionally this year. He's just looking for a team that can facilitate that. He has an incredible journey with Red Bull. We heard Christian at the weekend saying to Mike Seymour in the pen, like he wants to stay with Red Bull, but clearly the performance is key, and it's been lacking for a while now. It's not just this year. It's from the middle of last season. It's realistically from Miami last year, isn't it? That Red Bull have not looked like the fastest team. And Aston Martin, Mercedes, very well funded, got some really key elements. Mercedes are expected to have that best in class power unit for next year. Aston Martin have Adrian Newey, and and a lot of funding as well. So very, very appealing. And you say, where can we draw the conclusion? Red Bull clearly feel that they had to take action to try and change that, and try and compete with the two teams that are trying to steal him away.
Yeah, so Laurent Mekies then is the man to step in as CEO of Red Bull Racing. Alain Permane has moved up then to team principal of Racing Bull, stepping up in Mekies' absence, and then Christian Horner leaving with immediate effect. I suppose in Belgium, there is going to be a lot of media attention surrounding both Racing Bulls and the Red Bull. So the Red Bull Energy Station, I think, will be flocked with media looking to get reaction to this, and from their 4 drivers as well. Where do Red Bull go from here immediately? How do they react and respond to this? How can they? Can they do anything in Belgium and indeed Hungary before the summer break, before I guess they take some time, take stock, take those mandatory weeks off to steady the ship?
It's an interesting time, isn't it? Coming just after Silverstone and this mini summer break that we have now, 2 weekends off to let the noise die down. But you're right, Laura, this is going to go right back up again when we get to Belgium. I'm sure there are a lot of very capable communications professionals and in the PR department who are going to work out the line that we will be hearing time and time again over the Belgian weekend, whatever it is. I imagine that would be Laurent Mekies on the ground, steadying the ship, trying to calm everything down, and then really to start the season from scratch, try and get Yuki Tsunoda more comfortable in that car, surely has to be the number one goal. Getting Max Verstappen re-comfortable in the car, because he wasn't happy for most of the Silverstone weekend. But Red Bull, at least for the tail end of the season, have to make that second Red Bull car work in order to stand any chance of going back up in the Constructors' Championship. I think that presumably has to be job number one, and then just quietening everything down. Really, there's been so much chatter around the team for the last 18 months. And this is at least the time to say, okay, this is a line in the sand. We build from here. That building process, like I've said before, I don't think is going to be an easy one. But I think in Laurent Mekies, at least they've got someone with a hell of a CV, great credentials, looks like the right person for the job.
Yeah, a thoroughly likable person as well. And as you guys have mentioned, making Red Bull that place that these key brains and impressive people want to work at is so much a part of allowing Red Bull to journey back to the top. Alex, sum it up then. Where do Red Bull go from here? And also, do you see any other key personnel either leaving the team of their own accord or perhaps being asked to leave?
I think that we're ending in a very key place, though, because if you consider Toto Wolff has been with Mercedes since 2014. Everyone else is only 2 years in the job. All the other team principals, as of today, 2 years in the job. And that I think speaks to the last point you made about the brains. When you take over, you're trying to acquire teams, personnel, to help your team go in your direction with your philosophy. So if everyone is a maximum of 2 years in the job, apart from Toto Wolff, everyone's been placed in this new role with the emphasis of, okay, what are you going to do, Andrea Stella? Who are you going to acquire, Andy Cowell? And as a result, you've got these situations whereby almost I feel that they finished today trying to make Red Bull a place that can recruit the key people to return them to the front of the field. And Formula One has lost a huge character from Drive to Survive, his rivalry with Toto Wolff. If you consider that 2 decades in charge of a Formula One team is unbelievable in the grand scheme of the sport. So a key figure in Formula One's recent times, 6 times a Constructors' Champion, 8 drivers' titles, a huge influence on the sport that it is today. Very, very interesting times for Formula One, and a surprise that it came this morning.
Yeah, we all thought we'd have a 2-week break, didn't we, until we travelled to Belgium? But
no such thing. Formula One never sleeps.
Does not allow that. I swear this kind of news always breaks just as we all put our feet up. Greg, how do you think Christian Horner will be remembered?
Well, I mean, we talk about 20 years in charge. Then this 20 years not in charge of Ferrari, an established team. We have to remember the journey that Christian Horner has taken Red Bull on. They were almost like a Hesketh type figure, a sort of joke is probably too strong a word, but seen as the fun team of Formula One, the energy drink sellers, the can sellers, who come in 2005, rising from the ashes of Jaguar, who, not to disrespect Jaguar, but did not set the Formula One world alight in their time in the sport. And then they have this reputation, Red Bull, as the fun team. We all remember Christian Horner in a Superman cape jumping into the pool. And perhaps some of us have tried to forget that. But takes them on this journey, recruits the greatest technical mind that Formula One has ever seen, arguably in Adrian Newey. 2010 brings the breakthrough championships, the double. That run goes on to 2013. More championship success follows, admittedly after some fallow years. They get Max Verstappen, the generational talent. So I think once Christian Horner's legacy has distilled down, and lest we forget, he may go on and take another team principal role or a role within another Formula One team. But I think his legacy within Red Bull, you can't argue with the stats. You can't argue with the numbers. He's taken that team on an incredible journey. And the people who have been on that journey have a lot to be proud of what they've achieved. It's not been without controversy. It's not been without sparks. So, Alex, you referenced the Toto Wolff spat, which I think we'll all miss in the paddock if that goes away. But yeah, it's a hell of a record when you think about it and when you think about where it came from.
Yeah, thank you very much, guys, for all of your thoughts here. And summing it up, really, from this morning, Christian Horner then is leaving Red Bull with immediate effect. So there'll be no swan song in Belgium. He has, at this point, left our sport. We'll see, though, if he makes a reappearance at some point. You feel his journey in Formula One is not quite at an end just yet. Alex, Greg, thank you both so much for joining me. Laurent Mekies, CEO of Red Bull, Alan Permane, team principal of Racing Bulls. Good luck to you. Your journey begins now. Thanks very much for watching, and we will see you again in Belgium, where I'm sure this story will rumble on.